Welcome to the Rant Live. Well, hello. Welcome to the Rant. I'm John, and that's my partner over there, Evan.
Hello.
How you doing, man?
How you doing today? I'm doing well. I am doing well. You know,
Cool.
so it's a good day, I suppose.
It's a holiday season. It's upon us, right? It's like Christmas week.
It's on Friday. That is wild to me.
That's crazy.
Like I woke up this morning and had to remind. I was like, wait a minute, Christmas is on Friday.
I know.
Like, really weird to me.
It's just like, and you've got like gifts and stuff like that, you've been putting off getting, or, just the things you're like, okay, yeah, I can get to that. I can get to that. No, and then like, finally you're like, this is the week where like, it has to get done. And if it doesn't, you've just screwed up.
Yeah. Which, and the thing was, so we, my wife and I kind of, we do this every year. Like we kind of choose to dial back and we're saying, okay, we're not going to do as much, we're not going to use, and it's a little bit different as you get older, right? It's like a different, when they're little, that's when you could really dial it back, because what the hell do they care? Like, they'd rather play with the box. Like, you get
get them a couple Legos and you're good.
Yeah, that shit just gets all thrown away, and they're just like rocking with the box and playing stuff. And but a lot of that, we've gotten older, and both of us have careers, and you and I have this little side hustle here, and that kind of for better or for worse, kind of, then I'll have play money. I'll have like a couple beers, and I'll be like, oh, well, we get to pay over to the PayPal. So, ooh, I can pay for it with PayPal. Won't even come out of the bank account. Whoop, buy this. And then I'm like, oh crap. Well, now I got to buy the other one something, because I got to balance it out. And so, so we do more trinkety stuff. I think I mentioned this on the show. I bought an Oculus, the VR gaming headset, and I wanted to play,
Nice.
so we couldn't hold back too long on giving. So I gave that way early.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was a Thanksgiving gift.
Basically, yeah. So, and my wife and I don't really get each other much. It's more about the kids. And then this year, we don't have to go anywhere. So it's kind of like, oh, well, shit, I don't have to really buy much for other people. But we'll see. It's going to be, I am planning, this is my only day. This is my lunch break for my real job today, but I'm taking the rest of the week off, and I'm only working Sunday next week as well. So I feel like my Christmas gift to myself will be just going to the liquor store way more often than I should, and just, but because my Tavor shipments, my one was supposed to be here 3 days ago and hadn't shown up yet. It's all the, as people I'm sure have seen, so way longer answer than I had initially anticipated, but everything's getting backed up in the mail. So I've got like a massive quantity of craft beer that I purchased that I have been waiting on now for
nice. And then you just keep buying more because you haven't gotten your deliveries yet.
You're on the 17th, and it still says it arrived in someplace near Lombard, because that's where this the shipping company is hubbed, and that stuff comes from like Washington, but it's been there since the 16th. There's
nice.
Expected delivery on the 17th, but it's been stuck at awaiting package on the 16th. So when you go to look at the tracking, and having a tracking ID and being able to look that up is like the worst thing in the world for someone like myself, who likes to plan things and likes to have things set on time, because then you're like, oh, your item is shipped, and then I can follow it every step of the way, and then it goes like 3 days without changing, and it's maddening. So anyway, so there we go. I just want to get beer.
Well, that's good. Yeah, my wife and I, we kind of do the same thing, where we're like, hey, we're just going to like do small things for each other, etc. And so I've started training for to do a long run, the Grand Canyon, rim to rim to rim.
Is that a rim job?
That's a double rim job.
Ooh.
And so I'm buying myself all this like running gear and just all this stuff. And so I'm like, now that I told my wife, I said, you don't need to get me anything, because I'm buying all my own kind of gifts, so to speak. But what that does is it then makes it so that makes her gift get nicer and nicer, the more stuff.
Right. Got to make it balance out.
She's gonna have a good Christmas.
Yeah, well, that's good.
Yes, it is good. Well, and we celebrate Hanukkah too, so we kind of got all the bases covered. So
that is known as Chinooka if you are Smokey Robinson. I don't know if you saw that on Twitter, but somebody got a cameo from Smokey Robinson, and like their mom grew up on the same street as him, and he's reading it, and he's like, "Oh, I understand." He's like, "Your son's got you this. They wanted me to wish you a happy Chinooka. I don't know what Chinooka is, but happy Chinooka anyway." And I'm like, "Oh, like it's just so cringe."
Oh my God!
I'm like, how do you? Like, I get it if you don't celebrate it, but how do you not know what that is? Or ask somebody. It was really. So if you find that, it was really hilarious.
That cameo thing has really kind of like, bared some celebrities a little bit more than I think maybe they wanted to be bared, but not being able to pronounce Hanukkah. And I think was it Danny had an interesting one from I forget who it was, but yeah, just interesting to see how they pronounce words or mispronounce them, as the case may be. But hey, the Bears. Let's talk about the Bears, because the Bears are playing pretty good football when it may not matter. And they have just won 2 games. They beat the Vikings 33-27 at Minnesota, which was good, but would have been better if they would have beat the Vikings a couple weeks ago. And so here we are, 30% chance. The Cardinals won yesterday, so that decreases their chances of getting in. The Cardinals have to lose at least one of their next 3 games. And then the only way the Bears get in, if they only lose 1 game, is if the Bears win out, which is possible because they play the Jaguars this coming week, who are terrible. Mm-hmm. And if the Bears lose this game, it would be very Bears-ish for the Bears to lose this game. So I'm not putting anything past them.
The Rams just lost to the Jets. Like although
that's crazy.
The Jags, if the Jags try at all, because they now have a 75% shot at first place, and Trevor Lawrence from Clemson had said, there were the rumors, which they understandably, that he would like spurn the Jets if the Jets had the number 1 pick and took him. Mm-hmm. Well, now the Jags just jumped into first place. If I'm running that team, I'll be damned if I'm letting them screw up. Because they fired their GM earlier, yeah, but that's exactly the thing. It's like the Jets had the first they hadn't won a game, and the Rams.
All you got to do is lose, man.
Right? That's like it should be easy, and I get it. Like players don't want to lose, right? That's the thing when you talk. The tanking thing is really difficult, but like the Rams aren't a bad team. How does that even happen?
No, they're a good team. They were like, tied for the division lead or something, Yeah,
I mean, and the Jets put it on them, which is really, really weird. It's why I'm so shitty at pick'em, because I'm like, oh, these, and I inevitably I miss, like, if just watch my picks and you'll know how not to go. Although I did hit a 3-team parlay on the late game, so that helped me out.
There you go. That's more meaningful money anyways.
Right. Well, that was worthwhile. And that carried, but yeah, I mean, I'm watching these teams, and it would be very Bears-like. Although I have a feeling that, like we saw with the Texans, 2 weeks or a week ago, that they, as soon as they got down, it looked like they just laid down in the middle of the street and died. And I cannot imagine the Jags are coming into this like, the GM or whoever's acting, or the owner Shad Khan or whomever, saying that like, hey, if they're questionable, they're not playing. You know what I mean? Like just let's, you guys go ahead on out and party, and let's put you on the COVID list. You know what I mean? Like
Christmas, spend time with your family.
Go ahead and stay out of this one, because why? And at this point, the Bears have to be tried, because there was that, as we were talking about, and I think ever since I put the paper bag on my head after that Detroit loss, it seems like they've flipped, and there are a couple of reasons for that, and we can get into that, but they are now in the mode where they have to win. Because now they put themselves in the worst possible scenario, because even now, if they don't end up making the playoffs, which is still entirely possible, they're going to have that 500 record, right? Yeah. Or maybe, what 7-9
stuck in the middle.
And so now you have nothing. Like, this is the thing that I was afraid of, is that you've not, by all those losses and by all the mistakes they made early, most of which were correctable, and almost all of which were pointed out, not just by experts, but by a lot of the regular fans. And that is what I am afraid of. And it's not much better, even if they make the playoffs, if they end up getting a low seed and sneaking in and getting thumped in the first round.
It's an extra game for us to watch.
Yeah. Although who knows? I mean, maybe, part of me is getting to where I'm like, well, if they keep looking like this and actually playing smart football offensively.
You sound like such a Bears fan.
I know, and I hate it. Like, I don't want that. I was like, and I don't want to be going, I don't want them to lose. But I found myself for a while, okay, well, I wanted them to lose initially for the Texans to beat them so they could just, again, fire everybody, clean house, get a better draft pick. But at this point, there's no choice. That option's
None.
not there. You can't root for them to lose now because they'll still have a mid-tier draft pick and no place to go, right? You've got just enough. So I don't know, man. They're in such a weird limbo, and it's frustrating, even though it's exciting to see them playing better, because there's so many things that we can look at and say, why didn't you do this 2 months ago? It was right that you could have done all of these things. And yet here we are.
Well, and the weird thing that the Bears have not done this season is their offense and their defense have not played well in one game together. Their defense really looked pedestrian yesterday. I mean, they came up with a big stop when they needed to, when Brent Urban, kind of ran down the Vikings quarterback and almost, at least got in his face and stopped that 4th and 1 play. That was big. But, they look very, I don't want to say soft, but pliable. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and I think that's where you get what's concerning to me. If you're playing against a young quarterback and you can hopefully, and they do typically, we've talked about this on here before, but they typically do their best work inside the 20, right? They're a really strong red zone defense. And when you're playing an inexperienced quarterback, you can kind of let that happen because you want to kind of hang back a little bit, right? Show maybe a little bit of soft spot, kind of rope-a-dope them a little bit into making mistakes, and then you can capitalize with turnovers and that sort of thing. But when you're playing, and Kirk Cousins is like one of the consistently most overrated quarterbacks around, but he's very experienced, and if given a little bit of time, he can absolutely pick a defense apart, and they've got some weapons on offense. And that's what scares me. That's what when you see him play, like Aaron Rodgers just had a field day with him, because that dude is one of the most precise, one of the best quarterbacks, and I know Bears fans don't like to admit it, but he's easily, like, we're talking maybe top 10 all time by the time he's done. And he's just consistently excellent. And that bend don't break thing doesn't work against a dude like that, especially when he's got some serious weapons. And again, that's where I'm concerned. Again, Deshaun Watson's incredible, but he was without so many weapons that
he had no one. He was thrown to the water boy.
Right. I mean, essentially, yeah. It's like, here, bring up 5 practice squad guys and let's go. Yeah, and so that's helpful. Again, the Jaguars are going to be in that same boat, but come playoff time, when a team, you're not facing a team that's going to lie down, and you're facing some quarterbacks who know what they're doing, that does make things a little bit difficult. And so, I was a little concerned with that. Although, we'll see. I mean, maybe it gets all put together, right? That's what they keep telling us we should wait on. Maybe it's all going to come together. They're going to start winning pretty.
You never know. And so the defense does have me a little concerned, but like you said, I mean, they get to the playoffs and you kind of feel like the defense could step up. They've played some good games this year. They're not a great defense. They're just not, but they are a good defense, and they can play great at times. And so they definitely have the skill set to be able to pull that off and to step up when needed. Mitch Trubisky did a good job yesterday. He played a good game. He did not look great. He didn't look nearly as good as he did against the Texans. He had a really bad typical Mitch kind of interception where he threw into, it was at least double coverage, but there were 3 defenders in the area. Horrible decision. He should have just thrown that ball away. And it was, 3rd down and goal to go. So I understand he kind of felt like he had to force it a little bit, but would have been nice to come away with a field goal there. It didn't affect the outcome of the game, but again, seeing him make mistakes like that in a critical situation in a game that you really need to win is disconcerting.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's the thing with, and I hate to say that Trubisky needs to be a game manager, because that's not exactly it. But I also don't believe not that I don't believe this. He doesn't have the Aaron Rodgers arm talent, nor will he ever. Like, it's just and part of that goes down, and it's not even the arm talent. It's because he's pretty athletic and everything else, but he simply doesn't have the football IQ nor does he have the experience. I mean, he played so little in college, and I think people maybe don't. We look at athleticism, and that's fine in certain aspects, but to be a top flight NFL quarterback, you have to know the game so incredibly well inside and out, and a lot of that can only come through a great deal of experience, which he simply didn't have.
Yeah.
And I mean, Rodgers was able to sit on the bench for a while behind Favre, and even though I know that he hated that, it was kind of like Steve Young in San Francisco with Joe Montana at the time. I mean, but you're still soaking in so much of this information, and when he's put in the position when we talked about last week, they're moving him around, playing to his strengths, letting him move outside of the pocket, eliminating some of his reads, and saying, here you go. We're going to limit this. We're going to narrow the scope of your ability to screw up, which also necessarily is going to eliminate the ability for him to really take over a game. But if put in the right game plan, and the Texans had a horrible defense, so that helps. But he doesn't need to throw for 350 yards and 3 or 4 touchdowns. He just needs to not screw up. Like, that's really how that means. Move the ball. You got a real kicker finally. So get it inside the 40, right? Run a lot, which we finally saw. That was,
exactly.
That was awesome. Like, you have a really good running back.
I could not believe they actually ran the ball. It was
and kept running. Like, they kept running because usually they're okay in the first half. It's like, okay, you'll get 15 carries in the first half and then like 3 in the second half. Even when they're ahead. Like, that's what's wild to me. Like, you're ahead. Run the damn ball. And we finally saw that, but that's where, and again, we go back to it. And I said this yesterday, I was like, I've been calling for Trubisky and Pace to get fired like all season, at least after the 5-1 thing. And after the Detroit game, I was like, surely if they're ever going to do it, it's going to be now. But from that point, now all of a sudden they're turning. Now it's looking even more like there's no way they're firing these guys now because they're starting to move. And now I was like, well, do you run it back with Trubisky? Because you're not going to go spend money on a real quarterback. Like, that's what they're going to have to do. Agent. Yeah. And you're not going to get a high enough draft pick to get a guy who can come right in and start from you day one. So it's like we're going to see the same thing again. And that's what's kind of funny about this whole. It's like, well, and people say, well, they're starting to figure it out. I'm like, yeah, but it shouldn't take you 3 years to do that. Like, that's not the way that's supposed to happen. You should know after a little while, like a few weeks. This is the NFL. This isn't a rebuilding college program. It's not how that goes. But anyway, whatever. If the game plan is set up correctly for them to eliminate it's not going to be big, but it's not going to be bad to one side or the other, or good to really one side and bad to the other.
Yeah.
Play it up the middle a little bit and just kind of keep things a little more narrow. And maybe that's what it needs to be. Yeah.
I mean, and you're right. The Bears, Trubisky had an option another year, but the Bears declined it, right? So I don't think they have the ability to to go back. They're going to have to sign him to a new deal, aren't they?
Yeah, and I mean, but that's one of those situations. Like, unless he wants to go be the backup somewhere, for something, like, there's no way. I shouldn't say there's no way. He's white, so he's definitely got a chance to stick around in the league for a long time. But there's nobody who's going to make him their starting quarterback, right? So I mean, if the Bears can get him on something, and they're going to have to, and that's the only thing I could figure is if they get him on some kind of a limited deal because of their cap situation next year, and if he thinks he wants to be the starter, but geez, I don't know. I mean, that's about their only option. I mean, again, maybe they draft a guy. And say, well, hey, here's the deal, but how long?
I just don't see that happening, right? I mean, it's like if they were, in the top 10, then you think, all right, you could get a guy like Fields or somebody maybe, and and that you could plug in right away. But where they're going to end up, bottom half of the draft, you're not going to get anybody who's going to be starting next year. And if they are, it's going to be a way worse disaster than what we're seeing right now. So, yeah, I mean, you're kind of stuck with Mitch and Pace and Nagy, which, listen, and we talked about this last week. It's like Nagy's learning on the job. And I mean, to be honest with you, like, I'm not unhappy with Nagy. I think he's actually doing a really good job. I think he's going to be a good coach in the NFL. I like his approach. I like the way he, deals with the players. I think the way he presents himself when he's talking to the press. He's never really said anything too stupid. And, so I think he's a good guy for the job. It's just you got to deal with him learning. And I think, Trubisky's the same way. He's 26 years old. The guy is young, and so you still got plenty of time for him to kind of season and marinate and kind of hopefully bring up that IQ level a little bit. And as we mentioned, I mean, there's so much young talent on the team. I mean, the biggest thing the Bears have to worry about is the on the defensive side of the ball, where they've got guys who are starting to age or going to start to age a little bit, but they're still, Roquan Smith is young, Nichols is young. I mean, there's still guys on the defense that are young. So, I mean, the Bears have a good core. Like, I feel pretty good about their core. It's just whether you can get Mitchell Trubisky to come around and Nagy. I mean, like I said, changing to Bill Lazor to make the calls was a great decision, a mature decision. And I mean, and the fact that they ran the ball 32 times yesterday with David Montgomery, they had only gotten over 21 attempts previously once this season. So I think they're heading in the right direction. It may be a little bit too late, because I don't know if they're going to make the playoffs and if they do, if they can make an impact. But I think there's definitely some positives to build off of.
I mean, I guess so, but like if there's a semi in front of me on the interstate and I am driving 10 miles an hour faster than it and I only hit the brakes after I've slammed into its back end, that I can be like, well, I hit the brakes. Well, yeah, but you're already dead. Right? Because you just rear-ended the semi. And I get it, but it's like Nagy was so like this, and I'm talking back to last year, and we didn't have the blog or this pod / video cast. And by the way, if you're listening to this on the podcast, go out to iTunes or whatever, give us 5 stars and give us a nice review. But so I can't really go back to this and I mean, you can probably search my Twitter, I guess, if you want to. But I remember the time being like, dude, I do not like Matt Nagy calling plays. I don't think he has a good feel for how this should operate. I don't want him doing this. He needs to turn those duties over. And then, myself and, I was only part of a very large chorus of people calling him for him to give up those duties. And it took so long. Like, to me, that's a sign. And maybe, so we could look at this in 2 ways. We could look at it one and say, you know what? A good head coach does know how to delegate, and he gives those authorities up and he's able to better manage his team. And I will agree with that I think, and I wrote about this earlier in the year, even in saying like, hey, he's a shitty play caller, but he's probably a good head coach because the players respect him and everything else, and he can figure that out. My problem is that it takes them so long, and this is stuff that seems obvious to people on the outside. I understand that we have different perspectives, but that shouldn't have taken that long. It shouldn't have taken as long as it did, even before he got hurt, and Foles' injury became a blessing in disguise for them because clearly he was not running that offense very well. He wasn't even managing the offense. He was bad.
He is bad,
offense, right? But how did it take them so long? Like, David Montgomery was clearly showing flashes, and we're talking overall. Like, that's another thing. There's no way Cole Kmet, getting any playing time. Like, there are things, Darnell Mooney, all of these aspects are things that we're looking at it from the outside. Like, why are these guys not getting more time? You don't want to get it. You can say, oh, well, they're progressing. Like, but I don't care what you talk about. I can see them in the game. I can see the things they're doing when being given chances. It shouldn't take the coaching staff several weeks beyond what it takes, the invested observers on the outside to understand those things. And that's the part that worries me is like, okay, things are finally starting to change now. Does that, are we seeing the change? Are we seeing the advent of, pun intended, I guess, given the season, of a new, I don't want to call it an era, but of finally they've figured some things out and are beginning upward? Or are we simply seeing just another kind of an aberration, and the overall trend will be that they'll continue? Because again, we're still seeing they actually start scoring in the third quarter, though. Those things are starting to change, right? There are just some bigger overall trends that concern me. So, I mean, again, time will tell, but I don't like this kind of organizational tendency to just sort of like I don't even know if it's not really entropy because it's not getting worse. It's just stayed bad just to just kind of be just like, okay, we're cool with just sort of status quo. We'll just stay here. No big deal. Just the inertia of like, there's just, all right.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's like, hey, I mean, we're 7-7, man. Why are you harshing my buzz? 500. What's wrong with that?
Yeah, like we're not, and I had right, and I had somebody, and I was responding to my comment about how they should have been fired. It's like, oh, how could they fire somebody who hasn't had a losing season? I'm like, but that's exactly the problem. This is the Chicago Bears. And they have been kind of shitty for 30 years, and people don't want to admit that, but you can't just say like, good is the enemy of great. If you're comfortable just being good or being not bad, if you're comfortable with mediocrity, which the Bears have proven to us over the last 3 decades that they are perfectly comfortable with mediocrity, unless you're Lovie Smith and he got fired after a 10-win season because they thought all of a sudden, because the Bears think they're the Bears of 1985 and didn't realize the success that had been. And at the time, I do, quite honestly, I do think some things had run their course, but it just, you can't look at it that way. So, well, they haven't had a losing season. Okay, but they haven't won anything either.
Probably won't this year.
No, and that's
the Jags.
It doesn't do any good. I don't care if you didn't lose. 8-8 doesn't. That's nothing. What is that?
Well,
there's nothing in place to suggest that there's around the corner is suddenly this consistent winning kind of culture and atmosphere going on. That's I guess what concerns me more than anything is I don't get the feel that whatever's happening right now is necessarily sustainable based on what I've seen in the past and heard from them.
Well, and you're going to lose Allen Robinson. At least I highly doubt that the Bears are going to re-sign him because he's going to be expensive.
I'll be shocked if I will. That nothing would shock me. Well, there are certain moves that could shock me more, but I would be very shocked if they re-signed him.
Yeah, and so that leaves you with Mooney, and Anthony Miller. And I think Wims actually played more than Miller yesterday, which was weird. I don't think he caught a ball, but
he didn't punch anybody either. So
he didn't punch anybody. So that's always good. And so, I mean, you've got
will Riley Ridley still be around?
Yeah. Ridley's still there. It's just, so it feels like, this season feels kind of like a lost cause. You hope they can get into the playoffs. I really think that the only way, I don't think the Cardinals are going to lose their next 2 games.
And so next?
I think they play the Rams, and did they play the Saints or somebody like that? They play one game that's like definitely losable, which I think is the Rams. And I want to say they play the Saints, or let's see, I'll look.
I got it. I'm pulling it up now. Maybe if my scroll pad still works on my computer, unlike the rest of the keys on the bottom line. They play San Francisco and the Rams. Yeah. So they're home. Well, they're both home.
They are. They're
San Francisco's playing there too. So they both need a team has to travel for that one. And then they play the Rams. They're at the Rams on January 3rd. So the Niners just got it. They just got it put on them yesterday. The Rams right now are sitting as the 5 seed. Washington is the 4 seed right now. But that's because the NFC East is such a shit heap that it doesn't really matter. But I mean, the Rams are 5, so that's possible. But as we talked about, we just saw the Rams get beat by the Jets. So I mean, who knows? It's a really, really weird season. But I could see them losing that one. But the Niners are not good. They are not good.
So the Cardinals are going to win one of those games, most likely, right? Yeah. And so what that means is that the Bears are going to have to win out.
So there's the tiebreaker. So how does Arizona? What is the tiebreaker in that scenario?
Is it division?
I guess it would be. It'd be division record, right, at that point. And so, because they haven't played one another, and so, I find that I would be very, very surprised if Arizona loses to San Francisco, and I could definitely see them beating the Rams.
Yeah.
But Arizona's kind of weird. They're a little bit of a Jekyll and Hyde team.
Yeah.
They've got a ton of talent offensively. Especially the receiving core, and Kyler Murray's really fun. So I mean, that might actually be a pretty good game. But yeah, as things stand right now, so you got Green Bay is the number 1 seed getting the bye. New Orleans is the 2. They would play Arizona in the first round. Again, this is if it ended today. Seattle's the 3, playing Tampa Bay as the 6. And you've got that Washington Rams matchup right there. And those things could shift a little bit as that comes in. And then the Bears are sitting 8th right now. Minnesota's 9th. And then you've got Dallas, the Giants, Philadelphia. Although I don't know who's 10th. Somebody Yahoo. Maybe that. No, those aren't all. They don't list them all. So, but the Bears and the Vikings are both in the hunt.
Yeah. So we'll see. I mean, it just doesn't feel like, I can guarantee you that the NFL would rather have Kyler Murray and the Arizona Cardinals in the playoffs than the Chicago Bears.
At this point, although the NFL is not as they're still more along the lines of that. They're not quite MLB. They're smarter about their marketing than that, but they're not the NBA. So I still think the Bears have enough cachet that they would probably like that for the market. Would be my guess, but we'll see.
Yeah, that's probably true. So yeah, exactly. So a lot to come. The Bears have a very winnable game coming up this weekend, and that should at least put them in position to do something interesting. And listen, I mean, depending on what happens this weekend, if the Packers lock up home field, I mean, there's a scenario there where I mean, maybe Rodgers plays just for the first half. Maybe he doesn't even play at all if they don't need to win the game. If they need to win the game to clinch home field, then I don't think there's any way the Bears can beat the Packers. I just don't. But
yeah, and we'll see. So and as was brought up there, so we'll look at this right now. So the Vikings, or I'm sorry, the Vikings, the Arizona Cardinals, they are 8-6 right now. Right, Bears are 7-7, so the Cardinals are a game up on them. The Cardinals are 6-4 in their division, and the Bears are 6-5. So the Cardinals have the advantage there. If the Bears lose to the Packers, let's say that happens, then they're 6-6, and the Cardinals would still have to lose their next 2 games, both of which are against division opponents because they're playing again the Rams and the Niners. So they've got 2 NFC West. The Bears only have the 1 division game left, so they're up there in the division. So if they ended up tied, right? So let's say that's at 8-8. The only way, so if that were to happen, that would mean that the Cardinals did drop their last 2 games, and they'd be 6-6 in the conference. But the Bears would also be 6-6 in the conference if they lost scenarios. I guess that would come in there. So I don't know what the next tiebreaker is then. So I'm not smart. Oh no, I'm sorry. That's a conference. There's division.
Yeah,
division. Bears are 2 and 3. I'm looking at conference. Is it conference?
2 clubs head to head. 2 clubs head to head. Then best win-loss tied percentage in games played within the division.
So division,
and then best win-loss tied percentage in common games.
In common games. So the conference is not.
It's division. It goes division,
it's
common
head-to-head,
games,
they didn't play head-to-head, then division, then conference. So the Bears are 2-3 in division, and the Arizona Cardinals are 2-2 in division. So the Cardinals are better there. So we'll see. But again, Bears have 1 more game coming up. So again, we'll see kind of where that shakes out. But I would anticipate the Bears end up 2-4 in the division, and the Cardinals at worst would probably be 3-3. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think that's right.
We just keep saying we'll see because that's all. I mean, there are a few. There's more than one way to skin a cat, and also to get into the playoffs.
There is. So I guess that's what we are in. I don't know. I guess the worst possible situation we could hope to be in, which is a middle range pick. Not very likely that they're going to get in the playoffs, and if they do, not very likely they go very far. Yeah, that's not. Yeah, you're right. That's not great, but it is where we are. So, and hey, winnable game this week. So let's look forward to that because it's Christmas, right?
Absolutely.
With that, that'll do it for us today on the Rant Live. Hope you guys enjoyed spending some time with us today, and I hope you all have a very nice Christmas.
Or Chinooka.
Or
that's over now. But I don't know. I don't even know what Chinooka is. So it might be the whole year round. Maybe that's what. Maybe
every
that's
day.
what's
Every day is
yeah.
Chinooka, baby.
It's Festivus and Chinooka all wrapped into one. Chris
All
Mahana
right, man.
Kwanzaa.
Kwanta. Shakaha.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody.